Hi, Wynn. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here. It's Women's Wednesday.
Woo!
I love Women's Wednesdays. This is the day. I feel like every day should be a Women's Day.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like we need to be encouraging each other.
Yeah, we need to celebrate and encourage each other because I feel like there's so often that in the media and everything, we're all putting each other down.
Yes.
Judging each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's like looking at her and just being like,
Judgy.
Yeah, judgy.
Like, why do we do that?
You know, insecurities.
Right?
It comes down to insecurities. And I think, just we're pitted against each other.
Yeah.
And by men a lot of times and by each other, we're taught at a young age that we have to be a certain thing, we have to do certain things, and if we don't, we're not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're so right, and it starts at a very young age. And I think that's where the change needs to happen, is how we're raising girls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we still live in a day and age of like Barbie and not still, but now it's the social media. Yeah. And it's like, I feel like we take a step forward and 10 steps back. I mean, social media is so gnarly. And it's like this false sense of reality of what you should really be and look like.
Yeah, 100%, especially with the filters and everything and the photoshopping. And, we're not all perfect. Like we have flaws, and
yeah.
But on social media, we can look a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we have genuine relationships if we're basing them off of that on social media? Like my son, he just turned 15 and he like lives on social media. Mm-hmm. And I watched that and I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I was raised in a generation. Like there wasn't even cell phones when I was a little kid.
Same.
Yeah. Like there wasn't any of that. Like we were writing each other little letters and things like that.
Oh my God. The like notebooks where you would like send them back and forth. The like notes. Yeah.
Or we'd make those little, what were they called? Like you'd like fold them up and what were they called?
I don't know. I'm just thinking kites because that's what we use in prison, but I don't think that's what we call them.
It's the same sort of idea. But yeah, I mean, for my son, I mean, he like compares, everything to what he sees on social media. And, a lot of people even will think the same thing of me. Like I have this certain lifestyle and I present on social media a certain way, but I'm not always like that. Like honestly, when I'm not on camera and if I'm not at work, like the first thing I do when I get home, I'm like, take off my clothes, put on like really comfy clothes. Yeah. You know what I mean? I throw on my slides. I usually wash my face. I tie my hair back. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's like who I really am. And we need to just be doing more of that.
Yeah.
And we need to start having our kids raised in an environment where, however you are, that's perfect. We're all perfectly imperfect, in one way or another. So I could go down a rabbit hole on that one, but yeah, it's just crazy. It's so much change needs to happen. And I think the way to start it is having this conversation.
Yeah. I noticed like for myself is that, I used to be really critical of myself. And so I was really critical of other women. I was always judging other women. And when I started my journey of like healing, I actually made an effort to reach out to women that I had been judged. And I was like, I don't know if you knew this, but I hated seeing your success.
Wow.
I hated I like was secretly like hoping that you would fail, you know? And I apologized for that because, they were like, I had no idea. And I was like, I know, it was in me, like, that I was putting out this negative energy because I didn't feel good about myself. And I don't even know you.
Yeah. I think that's so strong to do that and say that. I mean, what afterwards when you did that, what did you feel like?
I felt really good. I felt like, and because of that, like I've been able to be friends with some of these women that, I would judge and hate on before. And it was like, and it was all, most of the time it's like sometimes over a guy,
Yeah.
And, but I felt better about myself. I felt like, what kind of like, I want to be really intentional about the energy that I put out and that I'm putting out positive things because there's so many negative things.
Yeah.
So where am I going to invest my energy? And I want it to be positive, but I wasn't able to do that until I was able to look at myself in a positive manner. You know?
Yeah. You had to do the work on yourself first. Mm-hmm. So you're in recovery.
Yes.
All right. Do you mind telling everybody how long you have sober?
October 3rd, 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
so you're coming up on 8, 9?
9. I don't know. Right? I'm always like, I think nine.
Nine. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, 9. I'm horrible at math.
So am I.
That was like the one subject I just could not figure out. Like my brain just didn't understand mathematical equations.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's 9.
It's 9. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. So what led you into recovery?
I mean, I had no other choice. I had hit my rock bottom. I started using when I was about like 13, 14. And then I got really heavy into meth when I was about 17. And, I don't really have addiction like this in my family. And, it was just, why I loved meth is because I was skinnier.
Got it. Yeah.
I had more energy. I felt like it made me like the best when possible,
Yeah.
And I mean, at first it was fun, but then it started, as we all know, like addiction takes us down this rabbit hole. And I ended up in prison 3 different times.
Wow.
2 strikes.
Wow.
Ended up, in multiple like abusive relationships, and because my self-worth was like, shit, Can we cuss?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. But I just, it started, with like first, an abusive relationship where it was just like emotionally and mentally, and I didn't really understand it at the time, but it really like impacted how I felt about myself. And the less I felt about myself, then the more I started getting into like the drugs, because it helped to numb, it helped to like, the escape and stuff like that. And, and as women too, a lot is tied into how we looked. And when I wasn't using meth and I would gain weight again, and then, so that was usually a part of my relapse is I'd get sober and I'd gain too much weight and I'd be like, oh, well, I know what fixes that.
Yeah. And I think this is so important for women to hear and talk about with it being Women's Wednesday, because that's the story for a lot of us. I mean, for me, it was the same at Adderall, which is essentially like meth if you're taking it at that level that I was taking it. I mean, I might as well have just been doing meth, but yeah, I mean, I got really, really skinny and it was like, oh, okay. This is great. I mean, it was great till it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that. And then, a lot of women, they go into treatment and people joke. And I think it's just such a cruel joke, like that rehab 20 or that rehab, and it's like, so then you get down on yourself and you get depressed and, oh, what's going to fix that? Because there's not that self-love that we need first and foremost. That's going to, really help us in that space. So you started dabbling when you were 13.
Yeah. Just like smoking weed, drinking.
So how did that happen? Like if it didn't run in your family, did you grow up in like a good household?
Yeah, I grew up in a great household. Like I was raised in Fountain Valley,
Okay.
And my parents always wanted the best for me. Like, they came here from Vietnam so that they could give us a better life. And they gave us a lot, and my whole family is supportive, but they were also, I'm first generation here.
Yeah.
So with Asian cultures, there's generally not a lot of love. I mean, they love us, I wouldn't say that, but they don't know how to show it. And for me, like after I've worked on, is that like, that's what I was missing when I was growing up, is that, my family is very like motivated. And so it was like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And, I'm kind of like a wild personality, and so, but that didn't really fit in with like the Asian culture, the Asian, like what they knew.
Yeah.
And so I felt a lot of times like that I didn't belong, that I wasn't good enough, and that things were tied into like performance,
Right.
So I had to get the good grades. I had to get this. I had to do these things. And, and some of it was like good. It's like, my grandpa would give us like $5 for every A, but I started to associate things with like having to do good things, that's like my worth.
Yeah.
And so when I didn't do that, then I didn't feel like I was enough, and that just started me like down this like path of needing that outside validation because I wasn't getting it, from like my family. And it's not that they didn't love me, but it's just that that's not their language.
Right. That's just not how they showed it, Yeah. Okay. So you start dabbling when you're 13, you're feeling a lot of pressure, I'm assuming, in the household and just like to perform. It's funny because I was talking to somebody about this earlier today about those pressures and a lot of times, most of the time families, parents, they don't see it because they're just used to being brought up their way.
Yeah.
And I was somewhat like that with my son when he was younger with like sports and stuff. And it was okay. You're strong, you're able-bodied, like you need to do this. Right. And he wouldn't want to do it. And I would be getting so frustrated and I could tell like, okay, what's going on here? And we had talked to a therapist at one point, and the therapist said, well, maybe look at it this way. Like, you're telling him he has endless opportunities, the whole world at his fingertips. He's this great, could be this great athlete, but maybe that is like too much pressure, just even telling him those things. I'm like, oh, I never really thought of it that way, and it's the way that we can show our love and our care, and our support in different ways that can make such a difference. Because that's where it all starts, as kids. So you started dabbling a little bit. And then when did you start doing meth? Like, how did it transition from smoking weed and then meth?
I think it's just like the girls at my high school were doing it. And, as soon as I did it, like my first line, I was like, oh,
this is what I need.
This is what I need. And I felt like I could do everything. I could study more. I was skinnier, I was all these things that like, that my parents and also society were saying that like I needed to be, and it just started spiraling when I wasn't sleeping. I remember I was in college, and they were kind of asking in ethics class, like what's the longest anybody's like stayed awake. I was like raising my hand at like 2 weeks, and I didn't really like understand like that was like really not normal.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting kicked out of college, because then it gets to the point where like I didn't go to class because I was stuck in like, whatever room I was in, like redoing my notes over and over again.
Yeah.
Or I couldn't get to class because, I was high. It was just all the different things. And, and my parents ended up kicking me out of the house because they found my baggies, and then, and that just kind of like started the cycle. I started like hanging out with people who were getting high.
Yeah.
Those were my friends. And then, along with like getting high comes like all the different things that we do.
Yeah.
And, and then it started leading to my first arrest.
Got it. Yeah.
And it's like going to prison the first time it was.
And how old were you?
I was 23 or 25, I think, around there when I first went to prison. And, and again, I wanted to fit in because everybody I knew was going to jail or prison. And I just wanted to be a part. I wanted that validation. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere because I wasn't feeling that like in my own family, And then even in school, there was like the Asian crowd, and I didn't really identify with them because I was born here. I grew up here. And then, and not feeling like that part, but then also like I said, I never felt comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel comfortable anywhere.
Yeah.
Until I started getting high, hanging out with people who got high, and going to, and then the first time I got arrested, I was like, oh cool, like I'm doing what everybody does,
Yeah.
And I went to prison, and I was like, great, I can fit in more now,
Wow, that's gnarly.
Yeah.
That was your mindset at the time.
Yeah, it was just all about like wanting to be a part of, and feeling like seeking that validation.
Yeah.
And I was like, kind of like, even though I ended up in prison, I was kind of a good criminal. Like I was smart enough to like figure out different things to make things work,
Yeah.
And so I like felt like I had like a really great skill set, know? And then
what was the skill set? I need to hear this.
So I sold a lot of drugs,
Okay.
and I also did fraud.
Okay.
And like that, like, was able to figure all that out, and, it like fueled the shopping addiction and all these things. And so, I was able to figure that out. And also like, I didn't look like I did drugs for the most part at the beginning.
Okay.
So I was able to get away with a lot. Like people would not suspect me as being a tweaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't fit the stereotype at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, but I didn't really understand like what was happening. I think my parents got me a lawyer so that I didn't do like a lot, I got a joint suspended, and all my lawyer kept telling me was like, don't get in trouble again. And I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. But all I heard was like, I'm not going to prison this one time. And then of course I got in trouble again, and I ended up going.
Okay.
But my parents, they did a lot to try to save me from my consequences.
Did they ever think that, back then, that there was like a serious drug problem and that you needed treatment, or was everyone in denial, or you were just rebelling, or?
I think they knew that I needed help, but they didn't know what kind of help, and I think they try to blame it on like my friends, right? And a lot of like external things instead of like, instead of focusing on that, like there's things that I needed to work through,
Yeah. Yeah. So when you went to prison, how long were you there for the first time?
So I got 4 with half, so I was there for 2 years.
Okay.
I got out, and I was out for a little bit, and then I went back in for like another year. And then I was out for a little bit. And then that last one in between, like my last prison term, was probably the most demoralizing that I've ever been. You know, because I started shooting up. And
in prison?
No, not in prison, but like
okay.
in like during that time. And you know, when I switched to smoking it to like shooting it, that's just, it took it to a whole different level. And you know, I'd been through, like I said, like abusive relationships, and it finally like it escalated to like now I was in like physically abusive relationships. And I remember thinking and telling people like there's no reason for you to do anything, because I'm just gonna go back to him. Like I'm just gonna go back to him. Like, so like don't. Like if you go and like, you know, fight him, you're just gonna make it harder for me to go back to. So what I started doing is I started eliminating people that didn't support that. And I would tell them, I'm like, I know it's hard to watch this, but this is like my choice, you know? And I just didn't feel like I didn't care about myself enough to be able to walk away.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thought process was, this is okay.
Yeah.
We're in love.
Yeah. Like, you know, and it's just, like, I didn't think I deserved anything better. I didn't love myself, so I didn't think anybody could love me.
And when you say you didn't love yourself, like, what was your thought process? Like, what was that conversation you would have with yourself at that point in your life?
I don't think, like, I don't remember, like, a thought process, but I just kept thinking, is that, like, this is just, like, this is just how life is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember at times, like, the first time I got hit, I was thinking, like, wow, like, how do you say that you love me and then you do this? But it's like, you know, this cycle of abuse. Then it would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And we'd be in that honeymoon phase. And then, but you know, it cycles. And at the end, it was just kind of like where I wouldn't go around people. Like after, you know, I would have bruises and I just wouldn't go around people because I didn't want to see the looks on people's faces anymore.
So you're isolating a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And were you not just, but you were doing meth, anything else at this time?
I mean, not really, like occasionally, like I would dabble in like other things, but I'm really like a hardcore tweaker. Like that's what I want to do. That's what I'm sick with. But if there's other things around, then I'll do it, but mainly meth.
Yeah. And was he on meth too?
Yeah.
Okay. And like looking back, I mean, what were some of the red flags, like warning signs in the beginning? Because it didn't start that way, right? Or did it?
No, it didn't start that way, but I think it's like just the different men that I would choose, you know, is that like they were insecure. So anytime that, you know, they felt that like maybe I don't know, like where they had to depend on me more, then that's when I think the abuse started harder, you know, and then I, you know, because I have a codependent personality, I want to take care of them. And then,
yeah, me too.
Yeah. You know, I want to be like, oh, let me fix everything for you. Like, I'll make it better. And then, but also I want you to depend on me so that you won't ever leave me. You know? And that was like, when I got sober and I had to realize that, I was like, damn, that's crazy, you know? But I think it was just like the mental abuse, like the, you know, the like putting me down at first. And then it was always like isolation, you know, like the first, like I was living out in North Carolina. Okay. I didn't really have any other options. I was living with his family, you know, and when he did, and then his grandma told me that I kind of deserved it. And I was like, oh wow, she was a whole nother thing. But, you know, and having to like almost make excuses for like why these things happened, or like why, you know, my face looked like that. But then again, like I just stopped going around people because I just didn't want to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar story with my ex-husband. For the majority, it was emotional, like psychological abuse, you know. And when I like look back at it, when I first met him, it was like, oh, this big, strong man that can take care of me with like this intense personality that's like this thuggy guy, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, I mean, at that time I was 19 when I met him. I'm like, oh, this is so sexy, and this guy's like so intense, and even like him being possessive and jealous, I was like, oh, that's hot.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
he loves me that much.
He loves me that much that he's gonna fuck up this other guy that looks at me like so stupid. But those were all like the red flags, and in my addiction, it was so hard because when it's a lot of like psychological abuse, you're like doubting yourself, you're questioning everything. And then especially when you start isolating, because that's what I was doing too, because it was the same thing. Like I wouldn't tell anybody really what was going on because I didn't want to hear it, number one, and it wasn't going to make any difference. Yeah. You know, because I was just so in it. And it would be that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And for me, it wasn't until I got sober and then going through like a year of like marriage counseling to then be like, okay, no, I need to leave this situation for my own well-being, you know, like, but that leaving an abusive relationship for me, and I think it's the same for a lot of people, whether it's the guy or the girl, like that was just as hard as getting sober.
Yeah.
You know,
I think sometimes it's harder because it's the emotional thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then especially if, you know, it seems like in most relationships, like when it's things like this, the guys move on really fast. I'm not saying that for everybody. I'm not trying to judge, but it just seems like they move on. So like, we're like, what did we do wrong? Like, and we're a mess, you know, and working on ourselves and trying to figure it out. And it's hard to see him moving on and being like, I didn't matter. It kind of like reinforces like, I didn't matter. He didn't love me.
Yeah.
And then, but then, you know, and from like, I wasn't able to get out of that part, you know, for a long time. And it wasn't until I got sober and started working on myself.
Yeah.
But even then in my sobriety, I ended up in a relationship where it almost to the point where, you know, he had relapsed and was using, and I found out that he was cheating on me, and I still stayed with him, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like literally God did something for me that I could not do for myself, that like the relationship ended. And then that's when I reached out to the therapist that I have now. And I was like, there's something wrong with the way I'm like thinking, the way I'm doing, like I need to fix this. So I made, she was actually somebody that I had met in the rooms, and I was thinking if I didn't have a sponsor, I would want her to be my sponsor. And I knew she was went to school for therapy, and she specialized in like intimate partner violence, and she really only works with women.
Nice.
And the only time she ever works with like men is like in a couples type thing. So I started working with her, and when the first day she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to love myself. Like I don't know how to love myself. Like I want to build my own self-worth, because I know because if I had it, I would not be in this relationship. I wouldn't have let it get to this point, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, since then it's like I've been able to, you know, really start to forgive myself and to heal and to, you know, take that deep and give myself grace, which I never had before, you know, and really work through things that like were driving me before, a lot of the fear, the insecurities. And, you know, now it's, you know, it's still a journey and a process. But again, like, you know, I can see like the difference from where I was like 2 years ago to where I'm at today. Yeah. And it's because like, you know, Brene Brown talks about like people.
I love her.
I know.
I love her so much.
Yeah. That wholeheartedness of that, you know, knowing that I'm worthy of love. And that's because I can love myself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, what a journey. I mean, we're very similar in a lot of ways. I went through that same journey, and it did lead into sobriety for me as well. Like 2-3 years in recovery, and still like I just wasn't picking the right people, you know? And I was still noticing like these behaviors, and for me, it really took like doing that work, that trauma work, you know, finding myself, who I really am. Becoming a survivor. Like that's a big thing. I think like when we get stuck in that victim mentality, it's so easy to just keep attracting that without even realizing it, you know? What would you say to women out there that are going through this right now and they're not sober and they're in an abusive relationship?
You know, and it's funny because when I've talked to women like that, and I was let them know that it's okay. Whatever you choose, it's okay. Like if you choose to stay with him, it's okay. Like I'm here. Like I'm here, but know that like you're worthy of something different. But if you want to stay with him, that's fine. Because I remember people telling me that I had to leave, and I was like, nope, I'm not talking to you anymore, you know? Yeah, and so it's just that like, if whatever you choose, like just know that it's going to be okay. It's okay. And that there's no shame in staying, because we've all stayed, you know, there's no shame in that. Like, I understand that it's because like, it's not at that point yet, but I hope that one day you'll get to that point where you know that you're worth something more, you know?
That gives me God bumps, I swear, because it's perfectly said, you know, there's no shame in staying. And I think that is such a key thing for so many women and men, because men go through this too, is that, and then you just isolate more, and you don't want to talk to anybody, and just being able to know, okay, this person's going to be there for me, you know, and I don't have to feel shameful about this.
Yeah.
On your journey to loving yourself, what did that look like?
Oh, it was ugly. It was painful.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was painful. And maybe I sent a picture of like my last booking picture. So can we put that up? So
I don't think we have it.
Did I send it to you? I didn't. I thought I sent it.
In an email? You didn't get it.
Oh.
We'll put it up though. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it didn't look, it wasn't pretty, it hurts a lot. It hurts a lot to work through this. But it was kind of like when I got sober and, doing the steps. Like when people say they did 4 and 5, that they felt amazing, I felt like shit. I just pulled up everything, but I had to trust the process and kind of get through that part.
Yeah.
And then it's, when you start doing like your 9th step and then like being of service, that's like when it all starts to come together. And that's when it like looks amazing, and it was a lot of like really having to look at who I was. And, the first time I looked at myself and I realized that like, I am a mean girl. Like I am like a mean girl. And it's because I didn't want you to feel good about yourself because I didn't feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And at first having to recognize that is like, that's like, ouch, Yeah. And the reason why, like, I wasn't a good woman because like, I would be nice to you to your face. And as soon as you walked away, I would start talking shit.
Yeah.
Judging you like, oh my God, did you see like what she's wearing? Like all the things. And, even too in my addiction is that like, I also liked like married men, different things, because if I couldn't have it, then I don't want you to have it either, Yeah. And I always relate it back to like, I'm like a little kid with a toy. Like if you can't have it, I'm going to break it. Or if I can't have it, then I'm going to break it, And so having to look at myself and just be like, oh my God, that's who I am. Like that's a lot. And so just kind of recognizing that. And then, it was when I first got sober, people, my sponsor telling me like, well, what is it about her that you see in yourself that you don't like? And I'm like, what? No. But recognizing like when I do have a reaction to somebody, it's because it's something in myself.
Yeah.
So using that as like, okay, now it's like focus, like what is it in me that is needing to be addressed right now? Cause that's why I'm having this reaction or that's why I'm having this response. And so, it was painful. Growth is painful. And, but I've learned enough through the program that I just have to keep moving. I have to keep like working on it and then to get to the other side. But when you're in the middle of it, it's
so
not
hard.
Yeah.
No, it's so hard. A big part for me was like my accountability and looking at my part in things.
Yeah.
Like I never wanted to look at my part in things. It was always everybody else. And, oh, I was such a victim. And, my classic was, oh, I just have the worst luck. This just keeps happening to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, no, Jenny, fuck, like step outside yourself for a second, right? Get out of your own way and really look at it. And I kept, bringing these things into my life. And I feel like the more I didn't deal with it, the more it presented itself in my life.
Yeah.
And once I finally sat in my own shit and went, okay, yeah, I need to really look at what I'm doing and being accountable. And then it started to change,
Yeah, for sure.
And that forgiveness that we have to give ourselves, because there's so much guilt and shame that surrounds all of it, in our own addiction, and being able to forgive ourselves, and others is such a huge part. It was for me on my journey. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the accountability too, and like looking at your part is what really helped me too. It's, because it puts you into the survivor. It puts you into like the solution. It puts you into like things that I can control. Because if it's always your fault, then how can I change that? You know?
Yeah.
And so being able to say, nope, I fucked up. Like this is on me.
I'm gonna own this.
Yeah. and then, but like now that I've owned this, now I can make changes. I can not do this again. Or if I do it again, I can learn from it differently.
Yep. Exactly. So you said your last stay in prison was when it got really bad. What did that look like?
It was, I didn't go down to CIW. I stayed up at Chowchilla, which is, a larger facility. There's the lifers there are younger. So it's like a younger, kind of group of women who like sometimes, again, like have more that they're trying to prove.
Yeah.
Whereas like at CIW, the lifers were like older women who had been there for a long time,
Yeah.
And so it just was, a lot of people are just very miserable. And so, when they talk about misery loves company, and it was like not wanting, there's no rooting for each other. There's no, like, it's all like tearing people down. There's so much jealousies and insecurities, and, there's a lot of like relationships in there. So, and so there's a lot of fighting, and there's just so much judgment, and it's like, why aren't you doing this? Or why are you doing that? It's just, there's so much judgment there. And I remember it's like, it was a lot. It was really tense, and I didn't realize that until later. Just like always wondering, like, oh, is this look gonna get me? And like, am I gonna have to fight over this like random look? Because sometimes I have resting bitch face, like, and it's just because I'm like thinking about something, but somebody. I could be looking at you and you think that I'm like mad dogging you, when I'm just like having this inner dialogue with myself. Yeah. But I had to take a look at who I was, and I realized that if I didn't change, that I was going to die in prison, that I was going to come back and I was going to probably die in prison, or like, end up, almost dead in prison. And I didn't want that. And so when I got out, all it was I just never wanted to go back to prison again. That's all I asked for. Yeah. And you asked God for that? I mean, you okay. Yeah. So you believe in God? Yes. Did you believe in God this whole time, or did you find God afterwards? So I was raised Catholic, and I'm pretty Catholic, family. But I never felt the connection to it, and it was when I got sober that I did feel that connection. And I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. I believe that there's some, definitely something greater than myself. Yeah. So I became more spiritual. Got it. Yeah. And so what was the final thing that you finally said, you know what, this is it, I'm going to get sober? I didn't want to go back to prison. Okay. Yeah, so it was the last time you got out. You knew you had a problem, obviously. Did not want to go back. Yeah. So I started working on some of it because I was in a substance abuse program in prison. Okay. And I remember like, and I'd been told this my whole like life pretty much, that if I resolved the problem with my mom, like everything would fall into place, And in the program, we were supposed to write a letter to our moms. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, fuck you guys. But on October 3rd, that's when I made the decision, okay, I'm going to try to do something different. So I wrote the letter to my mom. I read, and like, as soon as I started reading it, like I was ugly crying, like just bawling. Yeah. And at that point, I didn't really cry in front of people. So it was a big step for me. And then I had counselors at the time, and one of them was like, well, what would that look like if you mailed that to your mom? And I was like, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? So I mailed it to her, and that just kind of started me on the process of like, well, like, what's the worst that could happen? Because like already I don't really have a relationship with my mom. Yeah. Already there's all these things. So like, let's try something different. When I got out of prison this last time, my mom was still really upset about me. And I think it was more like she didn't know if she could trust me, and it was too hard for her to let me get close. And then like so many times I like, relapsed. And, but my dad was there from, he, was more, he was able to like, be a part of the early part of my recovery. And he was just like, if you're just having a hard time, reach out to me. And I was like, again, it was like, I mean, why not? I have to try to do something different because everything that I've been doing hasn't been working. And that's when I started to kind of build the relationship back with my parents, and it really took probably, I think my mom like 2 years before she really started to like relax and get a little bit more comfortable. And even now, like, I'm coming up on 9 years, and, all these different things. And sometimes she's like, you don't want to go back to drugs again, do you? And I'm like, no, like, no. And then, but it's still like there. I think, and it kind of like, it hurts my heart a little bit to see that, like, that even now, like, there's still that fear that it could go all, like I could relapse. And that, and I understand that too. Like, there's a very real possibility that I could. It's just one decision away, Right. And we've seen it enough in the rooms that people, you never know. It could be any day for anybody. You can never get overconfident. That's for sure. Yeah. So many people I see that, when they first gone through treatment, they feel so good. It's been 90 days. Oh, I feel so good. And they feel like their family should feel the same way. Yeah. And that's not usually the case. No. So what do you suggest to those, newly sober people that just want their parents and loved ones to just see that they're all better? I would say actions, like, and I always ask them, like, how long were you in your addiction? Right. Like,
Yeah.
So compared to like, I was in my addiction for almost 20 years. So 90 days is, and I've stayed sober. Like I wouldn't even say sober because I never really worked a program before. I've stayed dry for 90 days. So why would they think that? And we're all good talkers.
Yeah.
Like,
and they know we are.
They know we are. They've seen it.
Yeah.
We've done it so many times. And that's what I'm saying is that if you just, it's consistency in action. You just have to keep doing what you're doing.
Yep.
But like also like being vulnerable. Like I had to start opening up to my parents. I had to start telling them like, I'm having a bad day. Like, I don't know what to do. Like,
I love that. And not just being like, smile, everything's fine. I don't want to hurt them or upset them or worry them. Just be true.
Yeah. I think that
I love that.
was harder for them. Like, cause they were like, they always like, it took us by surprise. Cause everything was great. So it actually like was harder for them to hear me say that I was doing good all the time, because that like is like, oh, the shoe's about to drop.
Right.
And so when the first time I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, this sucks. Like, they were like, okay, good. Like, thank God she's talking to us, but that like, it helped. And it just because we're sober doesn't mean that we can't get angry. It doesn't mean that we can't have these feelings. And you just have to kind of like start talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, life happens, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't just get magically better.
It doesn't.
we just learn how to navigate through it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think talking like that with kids too. I mean, I do that with my son, where I'm just super open and honest with him, and it helps him too. I think, like I'm just not having a good day, or I'm going through this, or having to pause because I don't want to act out emotionally, and I had a real hard time with him when I first got sober. It took like 2.5 years, but it's exactly what you said. It was with action and consistency.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah. Like, you have to keep doing it.
And we have to keep doing that for ourselves. Like we have to show ourselves, that we can do this too with the consistency. And so you went through the program, you worked all the steps, and like you said at the end, being of service, you then start giving it back. Like, what did that do for you in your life?
I think, it really, it gave me a lot of peace of giving back, and being able to understand that what I went through wasn't for nothing. Like I'm able to help other women who have been through the things that I've been through, and be able to sit with them and to be like, I understand, like, like I had boyfriends that beat the shit out of me too, but recovery is possible. Like, changes are possible, and I'm here to show you, like, this is what I did, this is how I made it through, and to be supportive to other women. And like, I wasn't supportive of other women at first in recovery, but I learned how to, like, AA taught me how to be a friend, because other women before me showed me like what it was like to be a woman, what it was like to be a friend, because I didn't know that, and I realized that my group was starting to shift from having just men in my life to now I have like women.
I love that.
And it's because like now I know how to be a friend, so I have women and who I love that I can talk to about anything, who I can be like, what the fuck is happening right now,
Yeah.
And they love me at my worst. They love me and they support me, and there's no judgment. And it's like, even with the last, the relationship that was like, emotionally abusive, and he was cheating on me. It was like, when I went back to him, it was not like there wasn't judgment. It was like, you can come sit with us, or I'll come sit with you. Yeah, you want to go out to eat? Like, let's go out to eat. And whenever you're ready. And that like meant so much to me. To not have that judgment, not to have that shame, and to be able to like be who I was.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I think, what every woman strives for, to have those bonds and those relationships where you can just be authentically you. Every woman I've had on this show so far has said that they had all guy friends pretty much.
Yeah.
And it took like a long time in recovery to start building those female relationships.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're going through that, it's normal, and it can get better. What did you learn about yourself the most through this whole process?
I mean, that I'm worth it, that I'm worth it, that I am deserving of love, that I'm deserving of good things, but then that, that I can love myself.
When you're, are you dating?
Yes.
Okay. So So what do you look for now in a relationship that before you wouldn't look for?
So I'm in a relationship,
Okay.
and it's, I look for like trust. I look for actually like communication. Communication is key, because I need to be able to talk to you and like kind of tell you like when I'm like having insecurities. So it's like, just like when things are like coming up, to be able to say like, hey, this is happening, and like I don't know how I feel, like how I feel about this, and to have the other person listen and just be like, you know what, I'm not going to do that again, or like I understand, and to have that understanding there. And what did my therapist say? So if in like kind of toxic relationships, if like you tell somebody, ow, that hurt, they're gonna be like, well, your foot was in the way, like you were I stepped on your foot because it was there. And in a healthy relationship, they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I won't ever do that again. Like I'll be mindful of your foot, like type of thing. And I think that's kind of like being able to have that in the relationship. And I do have that now. So
Yeah. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Communication is for me as well. I just got out of a long-term relationship. We were engaged. Nothing bad to say about that person. I'm not that type of person to do that. But what I will say is that the communication was horrible. And a lot of that was on me because I was so scared to say in like the first two, when I met him, I was newly sober. Okay. So I was like trying to figure out who the fuck I was. I didn't even know. Right. And so I didn't really communicate, and I held a lot back because I didn't want him, to judge me or us, God forbid, get into an argument, a disagreement, whatever it was. So I was very much like people pleasing with him, and oh yeah, that's fine, whatever you want, sort of thing, And it wasn't until the last couple of years of our relationship that I started, speaking up for myself, and it eventually ended our relationship because of that. But for the right reasons, obviously it was meant to go that way. But I think it's so important for women and men to really speak their truth in their relationships and do it from day one. Yeah. Like I feel like we get into these relationships and it's these honeymoon phases where we're not being who we really are. And it just like sabotages later on down the road. I mean, mine was a perfect example of it, where now I am in the frame of mind of any relationship I go into in the future, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
I just have to be genuinely me, just like how I recover out loud. Everything in my life, I have to do it out loud and be honest and open. Because if I'm being fake in any way, it's just going to screw me in the end anyways.
Yeah, because then it kind of gets weird, because then they're like, you're like, do you love me or do you love fake me? Like, and if I show you real me, are you going to love that part?
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah. So for you, like in the relationships, did you feel like when you like would speak up that you would kind of get labeled like needy?
Totally.
No,
absolutely. Like, dramatic, needy. I literally posted something today about, how did they word it? Talking about, that you'll be too much for the wrong person, but for the right person, you know what I mean?
You're enough.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it got. Like once I started expressing my feelings, then it was like, oh my God, you're like, just stop. Like you're being so dramatic, or
you're insecure.
And I'm like, I'm just trying to tell you how I feel. Yeah. Like it's okay to express our feelings as women, and I hate that. It was like, oh, women are just so emotional and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, no. And even if we are being emotional, so what?
So what?
We're allowed to be emotional. It's not like if you're sitting there and going, well, fuck you. That's one thing, right?
Yeah, right.
But if you're talking about your feelings and you're emotional, you're emotional. Yeah. Like I didn't cry for a long time too. And I still struggle with crying in front of people because of how I was raised. My dad, he didn't show love, in the way we like to think about love and being, affectionate in that way. But that's how he was raised. And so I've still like struggled with that, with showing my, my emotions when I like want to cry, I'll hide it a lot of the time. And I'd like to get better at that. And I encourage anybody, like if you can cry, just cry.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's fine.
You know, if anything, it's strength that you're willing to show your emotions in that way.
100%.
Like anytime I see somebody being emotional and crying, I go, wow, like I'm jealous because I haven't reached that level yet where I can just do that openly in front of a group of people. And that's something I'm working on. But yeah, like just be you and be emotional and be messy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And the right people will find you.
Yeah.
They do. Like I've noticed that in every aspect of my life when I'm truly doing the right thing and I'm being true to myself, the door's open.
Yeah. A lot of things, you know, because if you think about it, like we put so much effort into maintaining like whatever it is, like, and the fake. And then when you just stop doing that, like all the energy goes into like other things, you know? And it, like you said, like it attracts that. Like authenticity is like so attractive. And like you get the people who really belong in your life as opposed to the people that you're like trying to get into your life, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. You know? And,
exactly.
And that's why sometimes it like, when things are supposed to, it like just happens. Like it's a natural thing. You don't have to force anything, you know? And that's why something like I've noticed for me is like, if I'm trying, like putting like, if like the wheels are spinning, I'm like, wait, this isn't how it should be. And I just kind of take that deep breath, relax and be like, you know what? God's had my sobriety, like everything.
Yeah.
I'm just going to step back and let it happen. And every time, 100%, every time that happens, like so many amazing things happen, you know?
I totally agree. I feel like the more I try to control, the less control I have.
Yeah.
And when I just trust the process, it works out. And I just feel so much better.
Yeah.
Just like letting it go and being like, you know what? Whatever's meant to be will be. And as cliche as that is, it's so true.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is good stuff. Alfred, he's in a long-term relationship, huh, Alfred?
Yeah, I've been in a relationship for almost, it's coming up 6 years.
Oh, wow.
6 years, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best thing about your relationship?
Connection.
Connection.
Yeah. Like even when rough times are happening, missing that connection is definitely like draining. But when it's there, it's very fulfilling. Yeah.
What do you think about people that are newly sober getting in relationships?
You know, I feel like after you remove the drugs and the alcohol, that people are the next addiction.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I always tell people, I feel like everybody's codependent who's in, like, you know.
For sure. I'm so codependent
yeah,
still.
you know. And so as soon as, you know, you take away the drugs and the alcohol and it's like, I don't feel good. Make me feel better about myself.
Yeah.
Make me feel, you know, and like seeking that outside validation. And I feel like if I cannot accept like love for myself, I won't be able to accept it from somebody else, you know? And I think it's true that like sometimes we attract like certain things, you know? And if I am still working through myself, then I may attract things that will allow me the opportunity to work on those things. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that I'm going to attract like the best thing for me. I'm going to attract something that, you know, puts me back in that situation. Like you talk about, like that repeated cycle. So I most likely will find somebody who is like all the things that I've like tried to get away from because that's what I haven't learned, that I haven't worked through that yet.
Yeah. And so I think it's not necessarily a matter of how long you wait. Like, you know, the going saying is get that year before you start really dating, getting into a relationship. But I think it's a matter of doing the work on yourself and being true to yourself first. And then seeing if those like behaviors and things are coming up.
Yeah.
You know, like for me, it was so crazy because in my 20s, early 30s, like I couldn't do anything by myself. I had to be with somebody at all times, meaning like could not go sit in a restaurant by myself, could not, you know, go stay a night somewhere by myself, could never go to a movie theater by myself. Like, why would I do those things? Never wanted to be home alone at night. Like I always had to have somebody with me, super codependent.
Yeah.
And I made sure that like I could do those things by myself. Like right now in my life, I can do all those things by myself. And I love doing those things by myself, you know?
Yeah.
And I can look at myself now and genuinely love myself, you know? And it's like, okay, so if you can like they say, get a plant, right?
Yeah.
Get a pet, and then maybe go from there. I'm super codependent on my dog, though. Do you have any animals?
No, I don't really like to take care of other things.
I love it. At least you're honest.
Yeah.
You can take care of yourself and a relationship, and that's that's it.
Yeah.
So you sponsor other women?
Yes. I haven't in a while. I kind of had to make a shift in like things. Once I started kind of doing the individual therapy, I didn't do like the AA 12 steps as much and kind of and did different things. And I think that's like too, is that like recovery is different for every person.
Yes.
And sometimes in the programs we like, this is the only way, and it's not the only way. Like there's so many different things. And for me, like I love AA, I love NA. It helped give me this life that I have, and I was able to work through a lot of things. But then I also like, I felt like I kind of was getting a little stuck in that, you know, and the therapy and like working on myself, like helped like me go into like different, to grow more.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like it was kind of a comfort zone, you know, and I wanted to keep pushing myself. And so I do work with women, just not in like a sponsorship role, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I'm pretty much the same too.
Yeah.
I did AA hardcore for like the first year or two. And then I love it, right? Nothing wrong with it at all. But I went into more of therapy and doing like spiritual work and stuff like that in my own journey. Because, we are not the same. And what works for one person, it's different for another person. So, okay. Anything else that you want to talk about? Being a strong woman in recovery over here.
I think one of the things that I've learned as like, as I've grown as a woman is that, perfectionism is hard for us. I think, it's, and I've had to like really be like, it's okay if I don't do this perfect. It's okay if I don't do this, like I am like pretty goal driven and motivated. I have like a plan in place. But what I kind of learned a few years ago is that I have to schedule time for myself. I have to take the time out, like the schoolwork, the things, that's always going to be there. That never goes away. You never actually get caught up on anything actually,
Yeah.
But it's being able to take the time out and do the things that I love. So I love live music,
I love that.
And so I make sure that like I get to go to and do these things, and I take time for myself, and that it's okay,
Yeah.
And so, and even if I don't get things done, it's okay.
But that is getting something done, because I'm such a firm believer in that too. Because if we don't get that done, if we don't take care of ourselves and have that self-care,
then we can't take care of it. We can't help anything.
Then we can't do anything else.
Yeah.
So when you say live music, what kind of music?
So I love like punk rock and like thrash metal.
Nice. I would not have pictured the punk rock, maybe a little bit, but nice.
Yeah. Like I was so sad when like Slayer retired.
Aww.
But I listen to almost any type of music. I love country. I love rap. I mean, I don't go to those like concerts as much because, but we have so many things lined up for this summer. Like ever since like kind of the pandemic, kind of like all the things like we're going back to normal. There's so much going on. So many things.
I want to go to something with you.
Well, we have a lot of things.
Let's do it.
Okay. What kind of music do you listen to?
I mean, I listen to everything. Not like thrash.
Okay.
That's like the one thing. And honestly, full disclosure, I think it's because my ex-husband, that was like all he listened to.
Oh.
And so it's triggering for me. And like my son will listen to it a bit, and I'll like immediately feel anxious and get a headache. And I'll have to have him change it to something else, just because it's like that what I mean, that reminder. But anything but like gnarly, like hardcore thrash, I'll go and let's do something sometime. Alfred, you'll have to come with us. Alfred is obsessed with YouTube.
Yes.
Like obsessed.
But like, what are you watching?
No. The band.
No.
Oh, there's a band?
No, YouTube. YouTube.
Bono.
YouTube.
Oh, YouTube.
Did I say YouTube?
Yeah,
I thought you said YouTube.
I might have.
I was like, what do you want?
I might have said it's been a long week. You too. Yeah.
Been about 20 concerts.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
he's
Like
a
front
big
row.
fan.
Oh, front row. Those are expensive.
You know what? It's not.
What?
What are you talking about?
No,
like, do you
it's-
have the in-on ticket?
No,
Like, what is
it's
going
just
on?
like-
How is it
I
not
know.
expensive? You just
Like-
get it way in advance?
Yeah, like for example, when I first saw them, I got a YouTube.
YouTube. See?
a membership to their fan club. So
Oh, okay.
I got access to buy the tickets probably like 8 months before it happened. And they were like $50.
Oh, wow. See,
And I
he's got the
literally
hookup.
was like right in front.
Oh, that's good.
cool.
Yeah. And you get those ones like general admission. But there was, in 2017, they did the Joshua Tree 30-year
Oh, yeah.
anniversary.
Nice.
That
Yeah.
was crazy.
Yeah.
Because I had to be in line around 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And the concert was at 9:30 at night.
Eesh, that's a little much for me.
Yeah.
But music is so therapeutic.
It really is.
I mean, like for me, if I'm having a bad day, one of the things that I'll do is I'll get in my car, I'll go drive down to the PCH, and I'll just fly along the ocean, just jamming out to music for like an hour, and I feel so much better.
Yeah, it just like it says things that we can't say, and it just like really like hits different things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're new in recovery, go find that sober fun, go try new things, go to concerts, try different hobbies, activities. Did you take up something that you didn't know you liked before in recovery?
So my recent thing is plants. Like
Plants?
Yes.
So you can take care of a plant.
No, not
Oh,
yet.
okay.
I don't know about that. Well, I could do the ones that like are in the water and they just live in the water.
Those, what are they called? The
hydro plants, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like the pothos, I think that's what they're called.
Okay.
But like I've had so many succulents and people are like, you can't kill a succulent. I'm like, they die. I don't know what happened. Like I'm not sure. So the ones that are in water, I have them like all over my part. But it's funny because and now I'm like, I need more. I'm like, can I have some of your clippings? Or I want more. I want more. And I'm like watching them. I'm like, did you grow today? And I'm like looking at it. I'm like, where are the new roots? And I just want them to grow. But that's like probably the newest thing. And I think I do like having the plants around.
I have a lot of plants.
Do you know how to take care of them?
I mean, I've never had those type of plants. I'm not a big like succulent or the water plants, but I have like palms and, like a fern kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like I don't really know the names of all of them, but yeah, I have a bunch of plants inside my house, and it's funny. It's a newer thing for me too. Like I've always had plants, but they always just die. And these ones I'm like really caring for. And I've noticed that only one, and I don't know why I do this with this one. This might sound kind of funny, but I'm going to say it anyways. I talk to the one.
No, I talk to mine too. I'm like,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just do it with the one. It's like I'm favoring. So maybe I'll start doing it with the other ones, but I'll like touch its leaves and we have a little conversation and, oh, you look so nice.
I've heard that it's really good for the plants when you do that.
Have you seen that video that I used to show it when I used to do groups? Where it shows like over a period of time talking to the plant and then being mean to the plants.
Yeah.
Like what? That's like a mind trip if you really think about that.
No, for sure. Because like even the plants are taking it in.
Yeah. And so that just shows you like what we put out in the universe.
It's like definitely it makes it matters. You
Yeah.
know? Have you ever read the book The Four Agreements?
Yes. And the fifth. Yes.
All of them.
Oh yeah.
And I read it and I was like, this is so simple, but none of us practice it. And it's hard to practice.
It's hard. Yeah.
It's hard to practice, and realizing that our words do have power.
They do. And that's why we need to speak up on things that matter. Yeah. And speak up for ourselves and love ourselves.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for being here for Women's Wednesday.
Thanks for having me.
You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So are you. I'm so glad I got to know you because
I know. We like have known each other, but not like known each other.
Exactly.
We got to go do a concert, get some plants, then we'll really know each other.
Go get something to eat.
Yeah. Food.
Yes.
All right, you guys. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.